How you doing, Anton?
Good. How are you, Ernesto?
I'm doing great, buddy. I'm doing great.
Cool.
Good to be chatting with you here today.
I know. I was telling Ben. I know you know Ben Stimson.
Yeah,
I was telling him that these video things gives us a way to kind of connect. It's almost like a virtual trade show, except
right.
I don't have to contend with 10,000 people, clamoring for your attention. So it's been a little fun being able to have a captive audience and also
Yeah.
being able to speak to some great people in the industry like you over the last couple of weeks, and just learning more about them. Because usually, when I see you, it's at a trade show, and we're all pressed for time, and you
Mm.
basically give us as much time as you can, but you're being pulled in so many different directions. So um, thank you again for jumping on this
Thank,
video
thank,
chat. And
yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
uh, so what I wanted to do, I mean, we have an hour, so I
Mhm.
definitely wanted to jump into a lot of stuff with you. So what I wanted to do with you was really get an idea of who you are. I know when
Okay.
I interviewed Matt Booth, the question that threw him off was I asked, I said, who are you? And he was like, oh, I have to think about it. So I wanted to do that with you, but not with such a broad question. I wanted to explore who you are through
Okay.
basically a series of questions, and hopefully give the people who are listening now and the people who will listen to this in playback mode,
Hmm.
a better idea of who you are, and why you're in a position that you are in the industry. Because I think a lot of people look at you as being like really like the icon in the industry these days. You're right up there in terms of cigar making. I was speaking to Alec and Bradley a couple of weeks ago, and they
Yeah.
talked about how much they were looking forward to working with you, um, on the Gatekeeper. And
Right.
so
Right.
I think a lot of people really look to you in the industry as for your blending skills and your experience that you've had in the industry. So I'm looking forward to asking you some questions about your
Okay.
experiences, and just picking your brain about blending and different tobaccos that we're all used to smoking, but we maybe not have given as much thought to as you have.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Sure. Sure, man.
So to start off with,
Yeah.
how did you get into the tobacco industry?
Well, I was born in Cuba back in 1951, and basically, um, my father, they had my mother. First of all, my mother, uh, her father, my grandfather Francisco, he had a little farm down in Montezuelo,
Mm-hmm.
which is way to the western part of the island down there in Cuba. So the tobacco has always been, from my mother's side and from my father's side, I've always been one way or the other around tobacco. And on my father's side, his father, my grandfather, he used to make, penny cigars in the streets of Havana. So I mean, I was always, coming up, growing up to about 7 when I left Cuba, I was always around tobacco one way or the other. And when we came from Cuba back in '59, it took my father about what 8, 9 years before he decided, he finally made up his mind he was going to go back to Cuba, and so he decided to get back into the business. He had a little shop down on A Street. He started with one cigar maker. My wife Elena was, one of his first employee, my girlfriend at the time, and I started working with him around 1970. And it was, for me, it was something that you kind of grow into it because, needless to say, being in Miami from 9 years and being away from tobacco to come back in it, was just something that was like natural to a certain extent. And although I enjoyed it a lot, I married my wife when I was 19, so I had to earn a living. And unfortunately, at that time, the cigar industry wasn't what it is today. So I, started working as a musician, and that was my main gig. And then during the day, I would go and help my father out. And in 1980, he passed away, and that's when I took over the small factory that we had. At that time, we had like, I don't know, maybe 10 cigar makers, and the business wasn't what it is today. It was very small. Most of our sales were locally in Miami. We had a few um, distributors. We had a guy in Chicago, and Greenberg, um, Pennsylvania, and we had got in New Jersey, and those basically were our outside sales out of Miami. So in 1982, I started going to the different, RTDA shows in New York and San Francisco. They had them all over the country, in Chicago. And it really was about 1992 when Cigar Aficionado came in, started their publication. And that's really what, changed the industry, not only for me, but, everybody that was in it at that time. So I was kind of, I always loved music, but at some point, I realized that I was never going to be a Tony Williams or a Buddy Rich or, or Steve Gadd, which were some of the people I looked up to. And, tobacco, cigars, just, it's something that just came naturally to me. And, I've been, in love with this business ever since, I guess I was born. I just didn't know about it. And here we are today.
So experiencing like the cigar boom actually happening. I mean, what was that time in the industry really like? Because I know we all hear about it, but I mean, to actually be experiencing that and having the ability to look back on it, what do you remember about that time?
Well, I remember, let me tell you something. The industry at that time was going through it was going through hard times. It was a small industry, needless to say, and there just was not, anything happening. I mean, as a matter of fact, at, some points, I started to wonder if I had done the right thing by, sticking with making cigars, because, there was really no money to be made. Merely, we made enough money just barely to survive, and as far as, keeping the family and the kids and stuff. And so it was not, you really had to be in love with the industry, in love with tobacco, cigars to really stick to it, because there were hard times. And, I mean, I think I'm one of the oldest at this point where, where I lived all that, from the 70s to seeing it what it is today. And the change, needless to say, as we can all see, has been, tremendous and incredible. And the amount of people that have gone into the industry nowadays, in those times it was a different business. Nowadays you have, what we're doing today. You have a lot of more things, social media and all that type of thing going on. So it was a whole different business. It was more of a, it's there. If you want to smoke a cigar, you come in every Friday to our little shop on 8th Street and buy you 25, you 50 cigars, fight for me, trying to get a lower price and all that type of thing. And, but there was no real future. There was nothing there that, you could look and say, do I want my kids to do this? And, needless to say, when Cigar Aficionado came out, that's when the whole thing changed. And then it became what it is today, which is a business, an industry. And the good thing about it is there's a lot of respect. There's a lot of, that we saw in the old days. Still now, there's a lot of respect for the business itself, for the tobacco, for the quality, for, all aspects of running a business. I mean, it's really, for me, it's been really exciting. I remember when we started, when we in 92, when the boom came in and, we had that big success with our cigars, we were using one of those little QuickBook programs that, and that seemed to do the job, And nowadays, I'm sure QuickBook is good, but nowadays you need a lot more than that. You need, good marketing program. You need a good distribution program, logistics, and you need good people, and that's very important. So it's a big change, and I'm blessed to have lived through those periods, the bad times, and now, the good times.
And as somebody who blends cigars and deals with tobacco, just the basic element of tobacco, how has tobacco changed over the years?
It has changed a lot. It has changed a lot, and I can tell you, in the old days, when we started back in Miami, back in the 70s, there were basically maybe two, well, I don't want to say two, but let's say there was Dominican tobacco and there was some Matafina tobacco. And then you would have the Connecticut shade and then the Cameroon wrappers. And basically those were the standard tobaccos. Once in a while, we get some tobacco from Puerto Rico or from Costa Rica. And so that was kind of what was available. I think probably a little bit before the boom, when once Honduras and Nicaragua started coming in to be a more prominent part of the industry, then you started seeing different tobaccos that you could blend with, like Honduran tobacco, Nicaraguan tobacco. And then after the boom, after Cigar Aficionado, the period from 92 to 98, I think everybody was just concentrated on growing tobacco because there was so much demand. There was not really, that much more that needed to be done because everything was sold. I think that once, the boom kind of died out, then everybody started saying, hey, we can't keep doing the same thing we're doing. We got to start experimenting with different seeds and different varieties and, growing in different places and really, making this something that's really unique and special because the competition is tough. And, you have great tobacco growers on there. Everybody kind of say, let's see what we can come up new. Carlitos Fuentes with Chateau Fuentes, all these people, they started experimenting with different seeds, different varieties, growing in different areas in the country. And I think nowadays, I think we have some of the greatest tobacco being grown of any era as far as, the industry is concerned.
So what was that first blend that you worked on?
The first, okay, the first blend that I worked on, when my father passed away, basically our blend at that time was a Dominican tobacco with Cameroon, I believe it was, yes, Cameroon. And we also been using some of the Oliva Sumatra wrappers at that time. And so those was basically, what our blends were. For instance, El Credito was one of our brands. That was, we used there from Cameroon wrapper. And on the Rico Habano and La Gloria, we used a Sumatra wrapper. Different blends, but, Sumatra. So those were like, the first tobaccos that I had the experience with. Then in 1990, when the ASP tobacco, the Perez family, decided not to grow any more wrapper in Nicaragua, they moved to Ecuador. And they had the farm. So I remember speaking to Sylvia and asking him if he would grow some tobacco for me, some of the Nicaraguan tobacco. And I mean, at that time I was, starting to get a little bit of notoriety, not that much, but a little bit, which a little bit before the boom. And so that's when, it's funny because when I first got the ratings in Cigar Aficionado, that was the first, blends that I had made with a Nicaraguan tobacco. Now, needless to say, I had tried Nicaraguan tobacco from before. There was a great cigar made by the Fuentes called Flor de Orlando. There was Hoyo Nicaragua. Cigars were being made also in Honduras that had, different blends that were, very nice. And, but that was really my first experience. Before that, it's funny because, I always try to do something that was different of what everybody else was doing at the time. So I remember at that time I was using around 1988, 89, I was using some Matafina, and I was using some Dominican and Olor tobacco from the Dominican Republic and the Sumatra wrap. And, for binders, I still didn't have that knowledge of, how important the binder is to the cigar. So I would use basically, either Sumatra or I would use, I believe at that time we had some Mexican binders also. And it was not, till I started getting more into the blending and stuff that I started to, experiment with different tobaccos. And that's basically, how I get what I enjoy, going out, sourcing tobacco, seeing what new tobaccos are out there, and see how how I can make blends with them that that my customers and will enjoy. So.
So, and you mentioned it a few times. So your work with La Gloria Cubana,
Mm-hmm.
um, and how when Cigar Aficionado started doing their ratings and their top 25 list, like how that kind of really helped kind of give you a little bit of a platform and more attention in the industry.
Right.
Um, and I think what was unique about La Gloria is like I think it was there that you first started playing around with the bigger ring gauges. Is that correct?
Yes, that was back in I would say probably about 90, I don't know, 96, 97 maybe. What happened was, we started to notice that there was a little bit of a decline in the sales in general. So we were going to go to an RTDA show, and I remember, I had some malls that were 52 and 54. I think the biggest one that we made was a 54, and La Gloria Cubana was Charlemagne. So what I did, I think it was like 10, 15 days before the show, we made some blends with the a 52 and a 54 and a 5, and I think it was 5.5. And we changed the packaging. We made the Serie R packaging, the cabinet type box, and real simple, I guess, to a certain degree. And we introduced that at the show, and it got a lot of notoriety. I don't know why, but it was a different blend that we were doing with La Gloria, but still using Nicaragua and Dominican tobacco. And then in I sold my business in 1999. In the year 2000, uh, we came up with the CVR number 6, and that's really what just changed the whole brand overall. The regular Glorias and the CVR, and then later on we came out with the number 7, and that was also a huge success. So it was something that I can't say I like to say I was planning it, but it's just something that it just happened for a reason. And sometimes things happen like that. You can plan all you want, but sometimes those plans don't work out the way you like. Sometimes they're for the better, sometimes for the worse. This one in particular was something that just happened out of the blue, I guess you could say. So.
Some people are commenting on different types of tobacco that you use in your cigars, and they want to know what do you like about broadleaf tobacco?
Broadleaf, I started using broadleaf back in the early 80s. And there was one gentleman and here in Miami that used to, he was like the distributor or the person that sold that tobacco here. Um, his name is also Plasencia, Guillermo Plasencia. And, that at that time, funny thing is, at that time, that tobacco, nobody really wanted it. It was, a beautiful, dark, you know, how do you say, creamy, sweet tobacco. It had strength, but that was not what the market was looking for. So, I mean, there was some of it grown, not that much. There was, some of it grown, but it wasn't that popular like it is nowadays. And I grew up, smoking that tobacco, making blends with that tobacco, working with that tobacco. Because remember when we were in 8th Street, we just had like, small, I don't know, I think we had like 1,000, 1,500 square feet. So everything was done there. So I had to work a lot with that tobacco as far as the fermentation, uh, the aging. I mean, it was like the first time that I guess you could say that, I saw something that could make a difference in my brand. And remember that time we paid for that tobacco about 225 a pound. Now it's up to like $30 a pound. So, but it's still a great tobacco. And that particular tobacco, like again the Sumatra, some of the Habanos tobaccos that are being grown now in Ecuador and in Nicaragua. I mean, there's so much great tobacco being grown and so many things that can be done with this tobacco. that it's like, for me, it's one of the greatest moments in the industry.
And you've worked with so many different types of tobacco. People will also want to know what's the biggest difference between Nicaraguan grown tobacco and Dominican grown tobacco.
Well, it's basically, they use the same seeds. The difference is the soil and the microclimate. That's basically the difference as far as the tobacco itself. Now, needless to say, when you go from there to the process, Nicaragua and Dominican have two different ways of doing it. Um, but I think, Dominican tobacco, it's a more noble tobacco. It's something that, I think blends very well with any type of tobacco. It has a lot of, has some character that's very similar to a certain degree, as you would say, as you would see in some of the Cuban tobaccos that are being grown in certain areas. And then the Nicaraguan tobacco is more of a, fuller, I would say probably fuller flavor, as far as the flavors, a little bit, stronger. But I think, they complement each other very well. Uh, Also, some Honduran tobaccos I'm experimenting with. Matafina, which is always a tobacco that I've always tried to, when I can find it, now it's more available, incorporate in blends that I'm going to work with. So, I mean, there's a lot of, there's a lot of difference, which is good because it just makes blending that much more interesting, and you can play with different, aromas and different flavors, as opposed to just using one type of tobacco from one country. So that's what I find that's so interesting about, each of the tobaccos from the different countries. It's blending those tobaccos that I enjoy and the flavors that I enjoy, So,
And when you left La Gloria and you decided to start EP Carrillo,
mhm.
what was the thought process behind that? Because starting a company, regardless if it's a tobacco company or not, is not an easy thing to
Yeah.
accomplish. So like when you said, okay, I want to start my own company and I'm going to brand it with our name on it and everything else, what were you thinking at that point, and what were the kind of the challenges that you faced when you were building up that brand and that company?
Well, if I'm going to give credit to, is to my two kids. When I decided to start over again, my plan was to, just make like private labels. Open up a small company in Dominican Republic, and make private labels for some of my friends, like Alan and Rocky. Were a couple of guys that said, we'd like to do something with you. And so it was really my kids that got involved, and said, if you're going to do this, we want to be part of this project, and why don't we call it, the family name, instead of, you making cigars for somebody else. Let's make cigars for us, and then later on, if you want to do something like that, fine. So that was basically, how the company came about. It was, the insistence on being part of it, and I think that, it worked out great, because I mean, to make brands for other people, I enjoy. I enjoy working with a lot of the private labels that we produce for, that we work with. But I think, having your own brand is key, and be able to really have a company.
Somebody just had a kind of a tobacco question, but they said when you mentioned microclimate, what do you mean by microclimate?
Well, I'm talking about the weather. I'm talking about the sun, the hours of the sun. I'm talking about rain. I'm talking about, and we all know that there has been some change in the climate. So I mean, to people that grow tobacco, they have to, needless to say, take this into consideration when they're planting their seeds. So like different areas, for instance, in Ecuador, there's not that much sunlight. I mean, there may be, I don't know, 8, 9 hours, 7 hours. In Nicaragua, in certain areas like Esteliz, 12, 13 hours. So all those things, plus the soil, okay, the minerals in the soil, that's what make up, the microclimate to a certain degree, and what that tobacco is going to taste and smoke like. Um, if you have, for instance, if you have a lot of rain during the growing season, you're going to get a lighter tobacco. If you don't have that much rain, you're going to get a heavier, fuller body tobacco. So all those things influence a lot on what the tobacco is going to taste like once you make it into a cigar. It's all about
Now,
the soil and the climate, because at the end of the day, most of the growers use the same seed, and each area will give you a different smoke altogether.
now, when people think about EP Carrillo, of course, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people right now think about the Encore.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the story behind that particular cigar and that blend? Like, how did that come together?
Well, actually, that started back with La Historia back in was it 2012, and the way that that came about. My son Ernie in 2012. He came and he said, he wanted to do something a different uh, brand that because we had the EP Carrillo, and he wanted to do something different with a more traditional type of look. More of an older uh, vintage look, I guess you could say, and using different tobaccos. That's where I started using the Mexican San Andres wrapper, which I never used before, with our company, and that was part of, I think, the success of that particular brand. But I think also what helped it a lot was the packaging concept, and that was something that was done by Lisette. She got a friend of hers who's an artist to draw up with her how do you say, guidance, and my son's guidance to make the artwork for the La Historia. So when we came out, I think it was in 2014, I believe it was 2013 or 14. When we came out with that cigar, uh, I remember people were coming by and they were loving the cigar, but they were also loving the packaging. We had that up and its whole pedestal, and everybody would come by and look at it and just stand there and say, "Man, this is really cool." So that's when I learned that packaging is very important. And then in 2016, Lisa came to me in 2015. She said, Dad, why don't we do something, like not replicate, but do something that's as unique as La Historia. And at that time, I was looking into, thinking, what could I do that's different? Um, Not using the tobaccos that we had, the Sumatra and the Habano from Ecuador and the broadleaf and all that. So remember I was in Honduras. I was visiting with Ernesto Plasencia, buying some tobacco from him. And he showed me this wrapper that he was growing. He'd been growing it now for about 3 or 4 years. And he showed me, and I just fell in love with that, Jalapa Habano wrapper. He doesn't tell me what seed it is, and I don't want to know. I know it's just great. And, we started working with that and, making it an all Nicaraguan tobacco, all Nicaraguan cigar, I should say. And it was, I fell in love with it from the moment I saw it. What I didn't know, what, was hard, it was to really blend with that particular tobacco and ferment it, because although it looked like, it was very easy to ferment, um, it took us almost, 2 years to get that fermentation right and to make those cigars that were, would get a number one eventually. But when we came out in 2016, we came out at the RTDA, and it wasn't right. It wasn't right. So remember when we got back, everybody was happy. Hey, the cigar was the encore is a success, and I'm looking at Lisette and a couple of guys there in the office, and I said, this cigar isn't right, and I don't think we should put it out. And they just stood there and looked at me and and basically, they say, look, we got to trust you, man. If you don't feel it's right, we'll bring it out when it's right. Now, mind you, we had already spent a lot of money on advertising and all kinds of pictures and all kinds of stuff to bring the cigar out. And So what I did was, when we got back to when I got back to Dominican, I started analyzing, and came to the conclusion that the wrapper needed more time. Now we had given it about, I don't know, at that time probably a year and a half of fermentation, slow fermentation. And what did the trick was, we did another type of fermentation in tercios. I don't know if anybody's familiar with tercios, but that's basically the palm tree, the bark of the palm tree, jaguar they call it in Spanish, and it's an old Cuban method that's been used around for since the 1930s. And really the method was the reason they did that was because at that time they didn't have any cartons. So to transport that tobacco from the farms to the factories, they would put them in this, send it to the factories. And what happens is that the factories would leave it there for 2 or 3 years. And once they opened this tobacco, they saw the change in the aromas, the colors, the texture. And that's how it became popular. So that's what we did. And when we came out again in 2018, the tobacco had completely changed. It was something so unique. I mean, for me, and I guess for a lot of our customers, that it got the number one cigar of the year.
And what was it like that day when you found out that it got number one cigar of the year? Because I'm always curious if it's like, when Hollywood actors, find out they get nominated for an Oscar, they always like, where were you? And, when I was speaking to our mutual friend, Rafael Nodal,
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, I asked him, I said, how was it when you found out? He's like, I was in the doctor's office. He's like, I totally didn't know anything. I didn't, people were calling me and all of a sudden it was like, poof, it was like, there it is. So I was like, what was that experience like for you?
Well, I gotta be frank, and I just knew that this was my chance. I mean, I say, if we don't get it with this particular cigar, I think it's going to be hard for me to, going forward, be able to get a number one again. I don't think that anymore. I think we'll get a couple of number ones before I'm gone. Hopefully, it'll be a while. But we had just come from my one of my granddaughters. They were having like a little show in the morning, and we were having breakfast when I heard the news. And I know Lisette, she was, I think she really took it very, very, very much to heart. Remember, I was with my son, my wife, my grandkids. And it was just, at that moment, you just say, hey, you know what? You start thinking back at your life and you say, you know what? It finally happened. And all the, hard times, or the hard work, or the
We're talking
sacrifice.
about this,
Yeah,
this
yeah, that's it. The sacrifice, everything, it was well worth it. And then you start thinking, that night, every night before I go to bed, I smoke, one or two cigars in my little terrace back here. And you start thinking about, all the people that help you make this. This was not something that it was me alone. There were a lot of people involved, going back to, my parents, um, the workers at the factories, my kids, the people that work with me, the inspiration of my grandkids, you know, wanting to have, leave something for them, a legacy for them, um, so that they say, when they speak about tobacco, they say, oh yeah, my grandpa was a cigar maker, and that type of thing. And you think about, you know, it's 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 very gratifying. Let's just put it that way. And I think the first one is I think it's very important, because that's when you really, when every year you're hoping to get that number one, and you keep being turned down, and it just makes you know, well, next year I'm going to do this so it's for me, it was a challenge every year, but every year it just made me that much more, how do you say, wanting to get that number one cigar of the year, and just work harder, and challenge myself more, challenge the people that work with me more to see how we could make this cigar really spectacular. And again, it's not all about me. I have, a lot of people that work with me that are, they kind of give me some directions that sometimes I think I have something down that's perfect or very good. And, they'll say, Ernesto, this is not right. And most of the times they're all right. So it's a, it's a big honor, and it's a big, it's hard to describe what that moment feels like. And I'm fortunate to have felt, let's put it that way.
And it was funny because soon, it wasn't too long after you got Cigar of the Year that for tobacco business, I think we recognized you as our, the recipient of our Hugo Chairman Award, which is given out to somebody that we consider to be kind of under represented, under kind of appreciated in the industry. And I know it was a task because we didn't want you to know until you got there what was going on. So I know there was a lot of behind the scenes like talking. They were like, can we get Ernesto there to like, yeah, we'll work on it. So, and that was a different type of award just because it was, recognizing you and your contributions to the industry. So what was it like kind of being recognized, not just for your blending skills, but for being you and your hard work that you have put in for so many decades?
Well, listen, needless to say, it's like you say, this was all kept from me. I didn't know. And when it was finally, when I was there and Michael Giannini starts talking about it, and I said, wait a minute, there's something going on here. And, and it was great, but you know why it was great also? Because I know the family. I know the old man and me, we go back a long time. The kids, that's such a great family, man, in spite of the fact that, they've gone through so many different phases in their business, they still, they're still at it and hitting hard and being successful. So coming from them was very, very important also because it was coming from that family, but also being, recognized for just being myself and that's also, I mean, it's a huge honor, that people take the time to really say, hey man, you're doing something special and we want you to know that we appreciate it. So, I mean, it really touched my heart. So it was a great moment for me.
And it was a great moment. I mean, your speech that night, I'm sure we have it online somewhere, but it was definitely a moment not to forget, I would say, from that night. Because, like I said, you were surprised. So,
I was.
Getting Michael Giannini to do the speech and everything. I mean,
Yeah.
we wanted to make it a special night for you. So, like, we were happy that you were there to accept it and that you were, that it meant something to you. I don't think we could do any interview of, about you without talking about your daughter Lisette, because she's a big part of the company, but she doesn't always get the attention that I feel like she should get. But what's it like working with your daughter, and what have you learned from working with Lisette?
Well, the first thing I've learned of working with Lisette, you got to be very careful of what you're going to say or argue about, because she's a lawyer. And she has a way of twisting things around and making you look stupid. So that's the first thing that I've learned. But I think that the most important thing, when I started this business, like I said before, the kids wanted to get involved. They're very much involved because of the fact that, it's for them. Like I said, my original idea was for a hobby type of thing. Now it's become real work. And I think, working, I mean, knowing that you have somebody here in the States that basically is taking care of, everything that's going on. It's, it's, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I think we're all very fortunate that, she's a lawyer, she's in marketing, she's in the finance, and she's doing a lot of things that, I wouldn't be able to do. And I think, very few people can do. So it's, but still, there's always that, father, daughter, and we have that respect, for each other. And the good thing is that I think it brought the family much more together. When I started the business, My son was in New York, and he moved from New York here to be part of the thing. So I mean, you see, when your kids are really behind you, supporting you, and you can count on them to do the right thing, and not have to worry about what's happening uh, with everything that's happening in the industry today. It gives me that much more freedom to really do what I do, which is uh, blend cigars and make cigars. That's like a big I mean it's a big, believe me, what she does as far as the FDA things that she's done for us. I mean, nowadays you don't have many people that have that much experience or knowledge of what is really happening on with the FDA today. So it's great to have that support.
Like I said, I every encounter I have with Lisette is a great one, and I love doing articles on her because she's very smart and she always has the insight that nobody else in the industry has. So she's
Wow,
one of
for
those
sure.
speakers. Like whenever I can recognize or work into an article, um, I try to get her perspective on in it because I think more people should kind of hear what she has to say. So I was curious about your input on that.
Yes, yes. Like I said, it's working with your kids. Uh, it's I'm not gonna say it's easy because I have my ways that are set. But like I said earlier before, the world is not. In other words, this industry is not like it was when I started. Nowadays there's a lot of more things involved that I really don't want to get into because that's not my forte. And I think that's what they're good at, where they can handle the different situations that are coming up, with how do you say, legislations or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So they handle most of that, and I think they're doing a great job.
Another thing we couldn't have an interview with you and not talk about is collaboration because you work with some great companies and other brands outside of EP Carrillo. So I
Hmm.
mentioned the Alec and Bradley Gatekeeper project that you worked on
Hmm.
for Ventura Cigar just last year, I believe. You worked with them for the
Yeah,
Cuban cigar factory.
right.
So what's so how do you approach collaboration? How do you kind of work with people? What kind of things do you kind of bring to the table in terms of knowledge, and what's the negotiation like, and how much of you is in a project, how much of them is in a project?
Well, I think that when I worked with Alec and Bradley, the Crown Heads, Mike Giannini, we've done a couple of projects with Mike. I think that first of all, I think what's important is you know it's important that they fall in love with what I'm going to blend for them. They have to be 100% on it. It can't be, well, Ernesto blended this, so it has to be you know good. Well, my customer may be different than your customer, and what I want to build is your customer, so that you know we can have this relationship where it's successful for both of us, or for both parties. And I think that when you look at guys like Alec Bradley, when you look at guys like the Crown Heads, which is like probably really the ones, Michael Giannini, right? The ones that we're working on with now. Now we're going to be doing something also with Renee from Villiger. We're going to be doing something with
Okay.
them. But there has to be a relationship, you know, that has been there or is going to develop. It's not a question of just making a cigar to put another cigar out, because at the end of the day, my name is on that cigar too. And I want that cigar, whoever it is for, that we decide to work together, to be just as important as one of my own. These people have put their trust in me, and I don't want to ever feel that you know they trusted the wrong person. So it's a question, like, as first, the relationship, getting an idea of what they like, or what they're looking for, and then we work together. That's one thing that is very important. We work together on the blends, and for instance, I like Bradley. I like one blend, they liked another one, and we went with the ones that they like, and it was a success. Same things happen with the Crown Heads. with the Ventura project, we went through, I think, 8 or 9 blends before everybody say, yeah, this is the blend that we like. Now, saying that, if it's something that I think that I really don't like, I'd rather not make it because, like I said before, at the end of the day, my name is on that cigar too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be something that they're in love with, but I got to feel comfortable with also that, you know, it's going to be a good cigar.
Now, there's so many new people kind of coming into the industry, like a new generation of people, I should say, like Alec and Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
So, what advice are you kind of giving these younger people coming into the industry now?
Well, I think, anybody that comes into this industry, and there's a lot of people that are, this industry is going a lot into the face of the marketing, and there's a lot of guys out there that are great marketers. And I think for them, what they're doing is great. They're having success. But I think that for them also, it's important that they really take some time and, go down to the factories, go down to the fields and just see what it's all about, And I think once they do that, they'll be a lot more successful because they'll be able to understand a lot better what, tobacco is about, what blending is about, and the work that goes on to making those cigars that they're marketing out there. So I think that's very important, be able to really get in there. And what I find is that a lot of the younger generation today, now they're starting to want to know more about, cigars and tobacco, which is great because, we need people out there, we need the young people out there to really, start getting out in the fields and growing tobacco and making cigars in factory and, going to Nicaragua and Dominican and Honduras or wherever. And, we need that young generation to come into the business at that level, not just at the level of, being out doing events and marketing the cigars. So I think that's my advice to anybody that really wants to be successful is to take some time to do that. So,
Now, looking ahead for EP Carrillo specifically,
mm-hmm.
I mean, what's some of the things that you hope to do with the brand going forward?
Well, this year is our 50th year, my 50th year in the business, and unfortunately, we're going through this situation now. We were planning on doing, a special cigar for this year, and we're gonna have to leave it for next year. So that's one of the things we're working on. We're working also on something that we were hoping to get out, this month, uh, and that's gonna, be delayed now to probably June or July. And then I'm working also on, just coming out and working on different blends. I just started working with some tobacco that I hadn't worked with in a while, Ometepe from Nicaragua. So I'm excited about, I've made some blends, but unfortunately I haven't been down in the factory for about 5 weeks now. So I'm going to be doing something with that in the future. Um, and, and just keep looking for great tobaccos. We like I said, now the industry is, has some of the best tobaccos that it's ever had. And the quality, the attention that's being paid to this tobacco is something that, I mean, it's incredible. Let's just put it that way. There's so much going on, not only in the tobacco side, but in all aspects of the industry. That I think this industry, in spite of everything that we're going through, is here to stay for a long, long time. So I'm very enthusiastic.
And just as you said, we hope you're around for decades more. But
Yeah.
when you think about your legacy, whatever that, whenever people have to look back, what do you hope people kind of remember you for or remember you as?
Well, that's a good question. At the end of the day, um, That's a very good question. But, I think people, once you're gone, they talk to you in a lot of sense about the past. And sometimes they don't take, what they learned from you at that time and bring it to the present. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, when I'm gone, and like you said, hopefully it's a long time from now, that those people that, were around me that, want to know more about, what I did with tobacco, how I blended tobacco. And the reason I say is because, me being a musician, I always look back, what was this lick that Buddy Rich did, or this pattern that Tony Williams did. And I don't know if people are doing that, but I think, like even myself, I'll go and I'll smoke a cigar, you know, a Padron, a Fuentes, an Age, Pepin, whatever. And I'll buy another one, just open it up and check out, what tobaccos are they using, I'll burn it. I'll smoke each cigar, each tobacco by itself because I'm a student. I'm a student of tobacco, and I want to keep learning. Even at my age, I want to keep learning because I feel I haven't learned everything that I could learn from tobacco. And and like I said, it could be any cigar. If there's something interested in it, and I want to know more about it, and I want to see, what the different, how they bunch the tobacco, how they bunch the cigars, how many liso, viso, seco, ligero, what binder, the wrapper. I love that, and that's, I think that, if once I'm not here, people will still do that. I don't know if they do or not. I know that I do it, and I know that that's something that's really, brought to me a lot of satisfaction, and it's like reading a book. You know, here it's like reading a book, and I think people should do that. And I guess that's what that's really what I want to, And like I said before, my grandkids, when they talk about me, they say, "Oh yeah, he was, Hall of Famer, #1 cigar of the year, whatever." Make them proud. Let's put it that way, and make my kids proud.
What's your advice kind of to the industry right now going forward? Because like you said, the industry right now is facing so many different challenges just from legislation and how to move forward. So as somebody who's been in the industry so long, I mean, what's your parting advice for the industry as we kind of wrap up the interview for today?
Well, I think that we have to be, needless to say, this is that is going on is something that's not going to wait. It's not going to wait anytime soon. I think we have to think long term. I think we shouldn't get desperate. We're going through hard times, but every business, every industry, has gone through these times at one point or another. Um, America is probably it's the greatest country in the world, and I think we'll find a way to beat this that we're going through now. So I think that in spite of everything, I think again, we have to sit back now and wait and see what happens as far as which way this situation is going to take us. But saying that, it may not be this year, it may not be next year, but I think we'll get over it, and we just can't go crazy. I think now for me, we're looking at it for my company, for our company, we're looking at a strategy, going forward the next 3 years. How are we going to position ourselves in the market?
Mm-hmm.
What do we want to do? Uh, what do we want to be in our customers' eyes? Given that confidence that they're going to buy a Carrillo cigar or one made by us for other people, and they're going to have the consistency, and you know they're going to have the quality that they deserve for buying that cigar. So I think my most important thing now is sit back, analyze your business, and know what you want to do, and don't go crazy, because that's the worst thing that could happen to any company.
So how can people, um, I know EP Carrillo has a website, they're on social media. What's the best way for people to kind of follow along with what you're doing and what EP Carrillo's doing?
Well, my daughter keeps telling me, I should keep posting every day and all that, but I'm not really that much into that, I guess you could say, or any of the social media stuff. But I think Lisette puts a lot of bits and bytes about myself and things we're doing on our social media, on our Instagram. I think that's a good way to follow us. And I think we have we have some plans in the future, which, like I said before, right now we're going to have to put on hold. But at maybe next year or the year after, I want to see how we can somehow get closer, have more access to our customers, and the customer can have more access to me. And I think what we're doing now is a great it's a great way of starting, I guess you could say. I think this has something that I think a lot of people enjoy knowing about the different manufacturers, the different personalities in the industry, and I think this is a great venue for that. So hopefully we can do more of those in the future, more of these type of things in the future.
Me too. I mean, it's been great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, believe it or not, we're at the end of our time together. So what I wanted to do is thank you again for taking out an hour out of your time to speak to me and to share your story with everybody here. And I know we all got a great lesson in tobacco today from who, if you'll scroll through the comments, many who say you're the master of tobacco. So I think that's, or either the master or the maestro. It was going in between those two. So people really enjoy it.
I'm honored. I'm honored because that's really what what I enjoy doing and what I like doing, and to have people say that about me, it's really an honor, and I appreciate it.
Well, like I said, we've enjoyed hearing from you, and hopefully we'll see more of you on social media and more of these interviews. But until our next encounter, I just wanted to say thank you again, and I look forward to speaking to you in person someday.
I look forward to it, and thank you. You're doing a great job with this. I mean, I've seen a lot of people are excited every day, watching you with the different people in the business. So keep at it because I think we need it, especially at this time.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. So
thank
you and have a great day. Stay safe.
Thank you. And to you, all your followers and all your viewers there, thank you for taking the time. And I hope you enjoyed our little chat here.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you, my friend.
You too.